Greetings. In the name of Yahshua the Messiah, King, Prophet, and High Priest of the earth. My name is Vincent Berardi, Rochester, New York, USA. I've been very active on Facebook since around April 9th, 2016. I have various YouTube teachings on Google. My wife does, Susan does too. My teaching and prophetic ministry dates back to at least back to the 1986 to 1990 time frame. Today's topic is video 37 part 2 about the Patriarch Joseph, who was a human being who, by the RUACH of YHWH God, that is dreams or visions, and after years or decades, they were showed to be 100% tried and tested prophet, oracle, or spokesperson for the God of the Jewish Christian faith. As a brief recap of part 1, in Genesis chapter 37 verse 2, it begins where these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. And go to verse 35. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers. So that gives you the beginning, the start of his age, and when he started having these dreams and started sharing it with his siblings, his brothers, and then later he shared another one with his father and so forth. Then, when we go to Genesis chapter 41, verse 46, after all the things that happened in intervening years, verse 46 of Genesis chapter 41. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and traveled through the whole land of Egypt. And the land produced a plenty in the 7 years of abundance. And he gathered all, verse 48, he gathered all the food of the 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt, and he stored the food in cities. The food of the field that surrounded each city he stored in its midst. Verse 49, and Joseph piled up grain like the sand of the sea in great abundance until he stopped counting it, for it could not be counted. Again, a euphemism. Verse 50, and before the years of famine came, Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore 2 sons to him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God hath caused me to forget all my hardship in all my father's house. Verse 52, and the name of the second he called Ephraim, and he said, God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortune. And the 7 years of abundance which were in the land of Egypt came to an end. That was verse 53. Verse 54, and the 7 years of famine began to come as Joseph had said, and there was famine in all the countries. Again, all the countries around Egypt. But in the land of Egypt there was no food. There was food. So it goes out in where all the countries within traveling distance of Egypt, they try to get food from Egypt and stuff. So let's pick up with part 2 in Genesis 42. Joseph's brothers go to Egypt for food. Okay? Chapter 42. When Jacob realized that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, why do you look at one another? He said to them, verse 2, look, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy grain for us, that we may live and not die. And the 10 sons of Joseph went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, the brother of Joseph, for he feared harm would come to him. Then the sons of Israel went to buy grain amidst these other people who went as well, for there was famine in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was the governor over the land. He was one who sold food to all the people of the land, And the brothers of Joseph came and bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. This actually appears to be a fulfillment of his earlier dream, where his brothers would bow down to him. And Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger to them. And he spoke with them harshly and said to them, "Where have you come?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed concerning them. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." Verse 10, and they said to him, "No, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are sons of one man. We are honest men. We, your servants, are not spies." Verse 12, then he said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." Verse 13, and they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. But behold, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." Verse 14, but Joseph said to them, "It is what I said to you, you are spies." Verse 15, but by this ye shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you will not go out from here unless your youngest brother comes here. Verse 16, send one of you and let him bring your brother, but you will be kept in prison, so that your words might be tested, to see if there is truth with you, and if not, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. Verse 17, then he gathered them in the prison for 3 days. On the 3rd day Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live. I fear God." Verse 19, if you are honest, let one of your brothers be kept in prison, where you are now being kept, but the rest of you go, carry grain from the famine for your households. Verse 20, you must bring your youngest brother to me, and then your words will be confirmed, and you will not die. And they did so. Verse 21, then each said to his brother, surely we are guilty on account of our brother, when we saw the anguish of our soul, when he pleaded for mercy to us, and we would not listen. Therefore this trouble has come to us. Verse 22, then Reuben answered them, saying, did I not say to you, do not sin against the boy? But you did not listen, and now behold, his blood has been sought. Verse 23, now they did not know that Joseph understood, for the interpreter was between them. Verse 24, and he turned away from them and wept. Then he returned to them and spoke to them, and took Simeon from them and tied him up in front of them. Verse 25, then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to return their money to each sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. Verse 26, then they loaded their grain upon their donkeys and went away from there. 27, and one of them later opened his sack to give fodder to his donkey at the lodging place, and saw his money. Behold, it was in the mouth of his sack. 28, and he said to his brothers, my money was returned, and moreover, behold, it is in my sack. Then their hearts failed them, and each of them trembled and said, what is this God has done to us? 29, and when they came to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, they told him everything that had happened to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly to us and treated us as if we were spying out the land. 31, but we said to him, we are honest, we are not spies. 32, we are 12 brothers, the sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father now in the land of Canaan. 33, then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest. Leave one brother with me, and take food for the famine in your households, and go. 34. And bring your youngest brother to me. Then I will know that you are not spies, but you are honest. And I will give your brother back to you, and you will trade in the land. Verse 35. And it happened that when they emptied their sacks, behold, each one's pouch of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the pouches of their money, they were greatly distressed. Verse 36. And Jacob their father said to them, You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and Benjamin you would take. All of this is against me. 37. Then Reuben said to his father, You may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hand, and I myself return him to you. For 38. But he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone remains. If harm meets him on the journey that you would take, you would bring down my gray head in sorrow to Sheol. However, in chapter 43, it says, Now the famine in the land is severe. And verse 2, It happened that as they had finished eating the grain which they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, Return and buy a little food for us. And Judah said to them, The man solemnly admonished us, saying, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Verse 4, If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Then Israel said, Why did you bring trouble on me by telling the man you still had a brother? Verse 7, And they said, The man asked explicitly about us and about our family, saying, Is your father still alive? Do you have a brother? And we answered him according to these words. How could we know that he would say, Bring down your brother? Verse 8, Then Judah said to his father Israel, Send the boy with me, and let us arise and go, so that we will live and not die, we and our children. Verse 9, I myself will be surety for him. You may seek him from my hand. If I do not bring him back to you and present him before you, then I will stand guilty before you forever. Verse 10, Surely, if we had not hesitated by this time, we would have returned twice. Then their father Israel said to them, If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best products of the land in your bags, and take them down to the man as a gift, a little balm and honey, aromatic gum and myrrh, and pistachio and almonds. And take double the money in your hands. Take back the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. And take your brother. Now arise and return to the man. And may El Shaddai grant you compassion before the man, that he may release your older brother to you and Benjamin. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. Verse 15 of chapter 43 of Genesis. So the men took this gift, and they took double money in their hands. And Benjamin, they rose up, went down to Egypt, stood before Joseph. Verse 16. When Joseph saw Benjamin with him, he said to the one who was over his household, Bring the men into the house, and slaughter and prepare an animal, for the men shall eat with me at noon. 17. And the man did as Joseph had said, and the man brought the men into the house of Joseph. Verse 18. And the men were afraid when they were brought into the house of Joseph, and they said, We have brought here on account of the money that was returned to our sacks the first time. that he might attack us and fall upon us to take us as slaves with our donkeys. Verse 19, so they approached the man who was over Joseph's house and spoke to him at the doorway of the house. Verse 20, and they said, Lord, please, my Lord, we surely came down once before to buy food. Verse 21, but when we came to the place of lodging and opened our sack, then behold, each one's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in its full weight, so we have returned with it in our hands. 22, now other money we have brought down in our hand to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks. 23, and he said, peace to you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have given you a treasure in your sacks. Your money came to me, and he brought Simeon out to me. 24, then the man brought the men into Joseph's house, and he gave them water, washed their feet, and gave fodder to their donkeys. Verse 25, then they laid out the gift until Joseph came at noon, for they have heard that they were to eat food there. 26, and when Joseph came into the house, they brought the gift before that was in their hand into the house to him, and they bowed down before him to the ground. 27, and he greeted them and said, Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke, as he is still alive? 28, and they said, your servant, our father, is well, he is still alive. And they knelt and bowed down. 29, then he lifted up his eyes and saw Benjamin, his brother, the son of his mother, and said, is this your youngest brother of whom you told me? And he continued, God be gracious to you, my son. Verse 30, then Joseph hurried away, being overcome with emotion, toward his brother, and sought for a place to cry. Then he went into the room and wept there. 31, then he washed his face and went out, now controlling himself, and said, serve the food. Verse 32, and they served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who were eating with him by themselves, for Egyptians could not dine with Hebrews, because that was a detestable thing to Egyptians. Verse 33, and they were seated before him, from the firstborn according to his birthright to the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another amazed. And portions were served to them from his table, and the portion of Benjamin was 5 times greater than the portion of any of them. And they drank and became drunk with him. Verse 44, chapter 44. So Joseph tests his brothers. In verse 1 of chapter 44. Then he commanded the one who was over his household, saying, fill the sacks of the men with food as much as they are able to carry, and put each one's money in the mouth of his sack, and my cup, the cup of silver, ye shall put into the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and the money for his grain. And he did according to the word of Joseph that he had commanded. And when the morning light came, the men were sent away, they and their donkeys, and they went out of the city, and had not gone far, when Joseph said to the one who was over his house, arise, pursue after the men, and overtake them. Then ye shall say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Verse 5, is it not that from which my master drinks? Now he himself certainly practices divination with it. You have done evil in what you have done. When he overtook them, he spoke these words to them. Verse 7, and they said unto him, why has my servant spoken according to these words? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Verse 8, behold, the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks we returned to you from the land of Canaan. Now why would you steal silver or gold from the house of my Lord? Verse 9, whoever is found with it from among your servants shall die, and moreover, we will become slaves to my Lord. Verse 10, then he said, now also according to your words, thus will it be. He who is found with it shall be my slave, but you shall be innocent. Verse 11, then each man quickly brought down his sack to the ground, and each one opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the eldest and finished with the youngest, and the cup was found in the sack of Benjamin. Verse 13, then they tore their clothes, and each one loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. And Judah and his brothers came to the house of Joseph. Now he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Verse 15, and Joseph said to them, what is this deed that you have done? Do you not know that a man who is like me surely practices divination? Verse 16, and Judah said, why can we say to my Lord, what can we speak? Now, how can we show ourselves innocent? God has found the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are slaves to my Lord, both we and also he in whose hand the cup was found. 17, but he said, far be it from me to do this. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he will become my slave. But as for you, you will go up in peace to your father. Verse 18, but Judah drew near to him and said, please, my Lord, let your servant speak a word in the ears of my Lord. Let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. Verse 19, my Lord asked the servant, saying, do you have a father or brother? Verse 20, and they said to my Lord, we have an aged father and a younger brother, the child of his old age, and his father and his brother died, and he alone remains from his mother, and his father loves him. Then you said to his servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes upon him. Verse 22, then he said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father. If he should leave his father, then he would die. 23, then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not again see my face. Verse 24, and it happened that we went up to your servant, my father, and told him the words from my Lord. 25, and when our father said, buy a little food for us. 26, then we said, we cannot go if our youngest brother is with us. Then we shall go, for we will not be able to see the face of the man unless our youngest brother is with us. 27, then your servant, my father, said to us, you yourselves know that my wife bore 2 sons to me. 28, one went out from me, and I said, surely he must have been torn to pieces, and I've never seen him since. 29, and if you take this one also from me, and he encounters harm, you will bring down my gray head in sorrow to Sheol. 30, so now when I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, now his life is bound up with his life. 31, it shall happen that when he sees the boy is gone, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray head of your servant, our father, to Sheol with sorrow. Verse 32, for your servant is pledged as surety for the boy by my father, saying, if you do not bring him to you, then I shall be culpable to my father forever. 33, so then, please let your servant remain in place of the boy as a slave to my Lord, and let the boy go up with his brothers. Verse 34, how can I go up to my father if the boy is not with me? I do not want to see the misery which will find my father. Verse 40, chapter 45 now begins. Joseph reveals his identity. Chapter 45, verse 41. Then Joseph was not able to control himself before all who were standing with him, and he cried out, "Make every man go out from me." So no one stood with them when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept loudly, so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Verse 3, and Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" And his brothers were unable to answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Verse 4, so Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they drew near, and he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." Verse 5, so now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves, that you sold me here, for God sent me as a deliverance before you. Verse 6, for these 2 years the famine has been in the midst of the land, but there will be 5 more years where there is no plowing or harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the land, and to keep alive among you many survivors. Verse 8, so now you yourselves did not send me here, but God put me here as father to Pharaoh, and as master of all his household, and a ruler over all the land of Egypt. Verse 9, hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me and do not delay. You shall send in the land of Goshen. You shall settle in the land of Goshen, so that you will be near me, you and your children and your grandchildren and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. And I will provide for you there, because there will still be 5 years of famine, lest you and your household and all that you have become destitute. And now, verse 12, behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of your brother Benjamin see, that it is I who am speaking to you. Verse 13, and you must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt and all that I have seen. Now hurry and bring my father here. Verse 14, and they fell upon his neck of his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck, and he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And afterward his brothers spoke with him. Verse 16, then the report was heard in the house of Pharaoh, saying, Joseph's brothers have come, and it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Verse 17, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your donkeys, go back to the land of Canaan, take your father and your household, and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land. In verse 19, and you, Joseph, are commanded to say this, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives, and bring your father and come. Verse 20, do not worry about your possessions, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. 21, and the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons at the word of Pharaoh, gave them provisions for the journey. To each and all of them he gave sets of clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 sets of clothing. Verse 23, and to his father he sent as follows, 10 donkeys carrying the best of Egypt, 10 donkeys carrying grain and food and provisions for his father and for the journey. Verse 24, and he sent his brothers away, and they departed. He said to them, do not be agitated on your journey. Verse 25, so they went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. 26, and they spoke to him, saying, Joseph is still alive. He is a ruler over all the land of Egypt. And his heart went numb, because he did not believe them. Verse 27, then they told him all the words of Joseph that he had spoken to them. And when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, then the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Israel said, it is enough. Joseph my son is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. Again, this was he was 30 when he stood before Pharaoh. There was 7 years of plenty, 2 years of famine. This stuff happened, and there's going to be another 5 years of famine. And come and bring your whole household. And you can continue to read what happened in Genesis chapter 46, 47, 48, all the way up to Genesis chapter 50. But basically, Joseph lived to a ripe old age. In Genesis chapter 50, verse 25 to 26, then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall bring up my bones from here. Let's go to verse 24, the verse before, actually 23 of Genesis 50. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the 3rd generation. Moreover, the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were born on the knees of Joseph. Verse 24, and Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will certainly visit you and bring you up from this land to the land that he swore to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob. So again, a remembrance of the promise that they would again resettle back into the land that was promised to them. And because he was about to die, verse 25, Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath, saying, God will surely visit you, and shall bring up my bones from here. Verse 26, so Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. So, again, his ministry, age 17, he started having dreams, didn't know what they meant. Age 30, he was finally before Pharaoh. He gets elevated in power and position. The 7 years of plenty, the 7 years of famine, and all the way up to age 110, he finally gets ready to die. And so he was a man who walked by dreams and visions. And after many years or decades, it shows that his dreams and visions, he was 100% tried and tested prophet or oracle or spokesperson for the God of the Jewish Christian faith. In close, sadly, over the last 3+ decades and over the last about 1700 to 2500 years, the vast majority of Orthodox church leaders, pastors, theologians, popes, things like that, unable to properly demonstrate decades-long track records similar to Joseph or similar to other prophets in the Bible, that many of these leaders over the last 3+ decades or 1700 to 2500 years or so have fallen away from the Jewish Christian faith, have given heed to seducing and deceiving spirits of Vatican Rome, idols of Rome, as per 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1 through 3, and have ran after spiritual intimacies with false veiled oracles, seers, or philosophers of Greece from around 600 BC to around 100 AD. You know, the Logos philosophers and teachers, false teachers and prophets, you know, the emanations of God, the incarnations of Jesus, the Theoplanes, the wisdom of... These are all Greek philosophies. You run after this stuff and brought such pagan or heathen dogmas into select New Testament canonized writings. And what I want to close with an exhortation with Paul's writings in Acts chapter 26. Paul was originally a persecutor. He didn't understand the Jesus Messiah, the anointing, but he had a heavenly vision, and he turned and started walking by that anointing and that calling. And in chapter 26, verse 18, the purpose of his ministry was to, Acts 26 verse 18, to open their eyes so that you may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, so that you may receive forgiveness of sins and a share among those who are sanctified by faith in me. This was where Jesus was speaking to him in verse 15. So he said, "Who are you, Lord?" And the Lord said, "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting." Verse 16 of Acts 26, "But get up and stand on your feet, because for this reason I have appeared to you, to appoint you a servant and a witness, both to the things which you saw me, and to do the things which I will appear to you, rescuing you from the people and from the Gentiles to whom I am sending you, to open their eyes so that you may turn from darkness to light, from the power of Satan to God, so that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a share among those whom are sanctified by faith in me." In the name of Yahshua the Messiah, King, Prophet, and High Priest of the earth, I ask for a more fully opening of the spiritually blind, those who have run after seducing and deceiving spirits and idols of Rome, those who have run after false veiled oracles, seers, and philosophers of ancient Greece, logos, false teachers and prophets, from 600 BC to 100 AD or further on. I bind these false spirits in the name of Yahshua the Messiah. Open the eyes of the blind, I ask. If you don't have tried and tested track record of dreams and visions and interpretation, then these teachers and idols of Rome are nothing. In the name of Yahshua the Messiah, amen.